Hang on, everybody. It's been a while since I've been up here.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Before we get started, I want to say by my count, this is my 32nd program from this podium over 25 years. And being part of this brotherhood is one of the great honors of my life. And I'm here tonight to tell you some stories from my latest book called The Lagoon, which is a memoir. But before we get started, let me see. Phoebe, can you see me? Hello?
Yeah, you're up. She moved. Yep.
There we go. Okay. Those of you who know something about me are familiar with my programs about my remote explorations in the tribal cultures I visited around the world. But tonight's going to be a little bit different because you're probably not aware.
Just tell her what you need.
One more. For 25 years, I pursued an alternate career as a marine cetacean specialist. My field of study are whales, dolphins, and porpoises, and I can add probably 2 or 3 dozen other species to that. Tonight is specifically, well, during the 25 years I've been doing this, for 22 years, I worked as a naturalist in the gray whale sanctuary of San Ignacio Lagoon in southern Baja. And that is tonight going to be special about these whales. You're probably familiar with the Baja Peninsula. That's a map of it on the left, but the part on the right that's all encircled there is the Vizcaíno biosphere. This is 5 million hectares of the most environmentally protected area in all of the Americas. In 1988, it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And if you'll notice, there are 2 of the 3 great Mexican sanctuary lagoons. Ojos de Libre up in the south is also known as Scammons Lagoon. I work down in the bottom there where it says San Ignacio Lagoon. There's a 3rd lagoon south of there called Magdalena Bay, which I don't bother with. It's I'll tell you about that later if you're interested. Anyway, these lagoons are the only place on Earth where wild animals in their natural habitat routinely seek human contact. Now, if you think about that, it's a pretty bold statement, but it's an actual fact. Now, I've been going down to this lagoon. Next one. There we go. When I was younger, we used to do a 24-hour bus ride from Tijuana to get there. Now that I'm older, we prefer to fly most of the way, and I've structured this show tonight to take you guys on along with the trip with me. We meet at a hotel in San Diego. We go over the border in a private van all the way to Ensenada, to the military airfield there, where we board these private props. From there, it's a 2.5-hour flight over the mountains of Central Baja, directly into the dirt strip, right here at the edge of the wilderness. Next one. These are what the roads look like where there are roads, and the highway signs when there are some. Most of the time we navigate out there by cactuses we've come to recognize, and we leave markings on them, or rocks that are piled up and painted. Wait, I have to catch up with myself here. Anyway, yeah, after the winter rains, miles and miles of salt flats turn into a painter's palette out there. This is absolute, gorgeous, absolute wilderness. This is 35 miles from the nearest town. It is 20 miles without a tree. One more. There are miles and miles of piles of chocolate clam shells and scallop shells because this land has been occupied for 10,000 years. The indigenous people here were called the Cochimi. Next one. And the family that runs this camp now are direct descendants of those people. They were born and raised in the lagoon. They have devoted their lives to the preservation of this lagoon and to the sanctuary of these animals. And I've come to think of these people as my second family. I was just down there with them in last March. Next one. They're primarily fishermen. As you can see, fishing is pretty good in the lagoon. There's no commercial fishing allowed. You're not even allowed to use a pole and a reel. There's no commercial boats. There's no diving. There is no spearfishing. There is no commercial airlines. This is pristine wilderness, as I said. One more. Next slide. A lot of these guys hookah dive for scallops, and as you can see, they're quite big. They're about 5 times larger than any scallop you can find up here in the States. Next slide. This is actually a map of the lagoon. Now, this lagoon is 5 miles across and runs 16 miles into the desert. And if you look, let's see, right in here, that is where our whale camp is. Next shot here, please. Okay, before we go any further with these animals, I'm going to tell you a little something you're probably not aware of about what we have in common with them. We are both warm-blooded, air-breathing mammals who give live birth and have hair. A whale has every bone that you and I have, from the tip of your collarbone to the tip of your finger. They have a pelvic bone from when they walked on land 6 million years ago before they transitioned into aquatic creatures. There are only 2 creatures on Earth who are born with a fontanelle on top of their skull, a soft spot to allow for expansion of the brain, humans and whales, because a baby whale is the fastest growing creature on Earth. In the womb, a baby whale has individual digits that become a flipper at birth, but a human baby in the womb has flippers that become individual digits at birth. The first literary reference to whales is in the Bible in Genesis. And the first literary reference to them blowing is in the Icelandic sagas in the 14th century, where they spoke of giant fire-breathing sea monsters who breathe fire from the top of their heads. So just a little bit about what we have in common. Next one, please. There have always been indigenous whalers. They've only taken what they need. They don't ever impact the stock numbers of these animals. Now, I'll tell you right now that the Atlantic gray whale has been extinct for decades because of overwhaling. The Asian whales, the Asian gray whales, are extinct because of pollution. That leaves what we call the eastern stock here on the western shores of the Americas. There are 18 to 22,000 gray whales. This is the only place on Earth where you'll find them. They do not echolocate. They have to navigate by underwater geography. Next shot. So, in 1859, a whaler out of San Francisco named Charles Scammon sailed into San Ignacio Lagoon, and he wrote that there were so many whales there you could walk on their backs without touching water, and so the slaughter began. Nobody knows how many whales died. Nobody knows how many whalers were killed. Because what they did in those days, the preferred way of whaling was to harpoon a baby whale. And its cries of distress would bring mother close where they could kill her, because they wanted her blubber for render into oil for lamps, and they wanted to use her bones to make corset stays and umbrella handles. That was the only reason they were killing these animals. Nobody ate whale in those days. It was just senseless slaughter. Next slide. Wait, let's go back a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Anyway, by, let's say, 1939, the gray whale was almost on the edge of extinction here on the west coast of the Americas because of overwhaling. And what saved them, in this next slide, is the Second World War. Because for 6 years, the industrial whaling nations of this world quit killing whales and spent 6 years killing their fellow man. And during that time, the gray whale numbers came back. One more slide. What saved them the second time? Okay. By 1970, they were on the verge of extinction for a second time. A lot of people will say this gentleman is responsible for them making a rebound. His name is Francisco Pacheco Mayoral. He was a humble fisherman in San Ignacio Lagoon. In February of 1972, he was fishing in his ponga with a friend named Santos Perez, and they were fishing for grouper. Now, they were always aware of the whales around them. They called them devilfish because when the whalers in Scammons and San Ignacio Lagoon were killing them back in the 19th century, the mother whales would fight back. A mother whale is 40 to 45 feet long and weighs 40 tons, and her 12-foot flukes on her tail flukes are a mighty hammer. So there were tremendous battles between the whalers and the whales. For 125 years, these whales were feared and called devilfish, and they were thought to be vicious killers. So when Pacheco Mayoral, one day in his boat, had a gray whale rub on the keel, and he panicked. He didn't know what was going on. Story he told me was he hunkered down in the hull of the boat. He and Santos both. The whale wouldn't leave. It kept rubbing on the boat. This was very unusual behavior for a devilfish. Eventually, he got up the nerve to look over the side. Next one. He found himself staring directly into the eye of a 40-ton wild animal in its natural habitat. He didn't know what to do. He thought he was going to die. Next shot. He eventually got up nerve and he reached over and he touched this animal, a devilfish. He said the whale pressed against his hand. He tried to get Santos to press against the whale. He wouldn't do it. He was too afraid. The whale stayed with him for over an hour. Pacheco kept petting this whale. He couldn't believe he was petting a devilfish. He went home and told his wife and family. And they said, you're either mad from the sun or if you had too much to drink because these are killers. So next day he took them out and they petted devilfish. Well, within 2 or 3 days, everybody in this lagoon was taking their families out and they were petting these killer whales. Something ethereal was taking place. Were these animals always friendly? Or were we just too busy killing them in order to know that? Next slide. Before you knew it, that touch, which came to be called the touch because the news spread around the world, became almost as famous as the next one, interspecies touch. Okay, Pacheco was featured in an IMAX film. He's been in 6 different books. Reader's Digest published his story first, and then Time magazine picked it up. Today, he is considered the godfather of whale watching around the world. He's passed away now, but I had the pleasure of knowing him personally for quite a while. Next slide. So this is what happened because of that interspecies touch. In 1972, the Mexican government created a wildlife refuge in San Ignacio Lagoon. The UN called for an end to commercial whaling. U.S. Congress instituted the Marine Mammal Protection Act. In 1973, Congress instituted the Endangered Species Act, which included the gray whale. And in 1993, UNESCO World Heritage Site was declared for San Ignacio Lagoon. And all this came about because of an interspecies touch between an animal and a humble Mexican fisherman. So now I've told you a little bit about these animals. I'm going to take you along into the camp where we stay down there, and I'm going to introduce you to the people, how we live, and I'm going to take you out on the water to meet these creatures. Next slide. This is our camp. It's pretty Spartan. It's where the wilderness meets the sea. It's 35 miles from the nearest small town. There's not a tree within 20 miles. That heroic family I showed you early run this camp. Next one. We live in these individual 2-person solar-powered cabins. Next slide. We eat communally in a dining palapa. We have 3 meals a day. We have all the snacks and drinks we want out there in the middle of nowhere. Everything is trucked in once a week. Next one. We have flush marine toilets, and we have hot showers out in the desert. Next. We have outdoor washing stations. Next. And we sleep in very comfortable cabins with full bedding, nice mattresses, pillows, and each cabin has a solar-powered charging station for your electronic devices. So even though this is camping, it's pretty luxurious. Next shot, please. So when we go in the water, we go in these 20-foot boats. They're called pangas. They're very similar to Boston whalers, if you're familiar with that. These are one of the most seaworthy boats I've ever been in. I've been out 7 miles past the breakwater in these. The drivers are called pangueros. Next shot. All of these guys were fishermen 7 months of the year. The rest of the time, they are some of the leading whale experts on this planet. These guys know more about whales than anybody I've ever met. They go through a rigorous training program of the Mexican government in order to be able to take people out on the water and do this. And as you can see, when we are out there, we're in constant radio contact with our home base and with all the other boats on the lagoon. If anybody makes contact with a friendly whale, we all call each other and we can all gather to share that. Next shot. This guy in the white on the left is named Johnny Friday. Yes, that's his real name. He has been here at the club many times, and he has spoken here. The gentleman in the Yankee hat is Maldo Fisher, and together, 28 years ago, these guys started this camp, which is today the premier whale camp in all of the world. And I have worked for them for 22 years until last year I retired from that. Next shot. So why do these whales come all the way down here? Because they feed in the summer in the Chukchi and Bering Seas north of Alaska, where it's frigid water. Well, first of all, they have a calf every other year after an 11-month gestation. That calf would not survive if it was born in the Arctic waters. A newborn whale calf has no blubber on it, so it'll freeze to death. Secondly, it has to get to warm water quickly, and in the lagoons of Mexico, there's 3 times the normal salt content of the open ocean, which makes these babies buoyant because baby whales can drown if they're not being paid constant attention to. They hug the shore because they do not echolocate like dolphins or orcas. They navigate by underwater geography. Excuse me, I'm catching up. Now, the first thing that will happen, next shot. As soon as a baby is born on the way, mother's going to push it to the surface for its first breath, and then she's going to feed it. This is actually a photo of a sperm whale nursing, because nobody I ever have run into has ever seen a gray whale nurse. They are so skittish you can't get near them underwater. But it's the same principle. Mother will secrete her milk from her mammary slits. It's 52% fat, so it comes out the consistency of a thick yogurt. It does not dissipate in the water. The calf will lift it up with its tongue, and the calf will gain up to 100 pounds a day, which is why they have a soft skull, so they can grow that quickly. Now, as soon as that calf feeds, mother's going to start making it swim, but it cannot swim with her. It's too young. It has no strength. So what she's going to do is tuck it under a pectoral fin and pull it along in her slipstream like a race car driver. It's going to take several days before that baby can keep up with her, even though she's as small as she is the slowest swimming of all whales at 3 to 5 knots. That's one reason they stick close to the shore, so they can use natural camouflage underwater to hide from predators because they are so slow swimming. Next one here. I'll go back one, please. Yeah, there you go. Why do they come to us? Well, orcas are found all over the earth, and they are natural predators of the gray whale. A gray whale is the preferred food of an orca. They're also predated upon by sharks and by whalers still. One thing in their advantage is the fact that they hug the coast, so they don't usually get out in the whaling channels where they can be harpooned, but I still have run into occasional gray whales with harpoon scars on them. And if you're sharp enough to take a look in that photo, you're going to see Pierre Odier and Jean Arias, because I've taken a lot of guys from this club down there with me. Next shot, please. On the open ocean, these whales will not approach boats. Sometimes they do in the lagoon, because it is a learned behavior. This lagoon will top out at about 350 whales a season. Out of those, maybe 25 are what we call friendly, that will come right up to the boat to be touched. This is a learned behavior, like I said. Mother's going to nurse that baby for about 8 months. After that, it's on its own. These are solitary creatures. They don't form pods or family units. But they come to us in this lagoon. Why? Well, because of the predation, and they've learned over the centuries, imprinted in their DNA, that they are safe in these lagoons. Next shot. This is my wife and I petting whales in the lagoon. This shot was just taken last March. Next one, please. Now, a mother whale is as affectionate with her offspring as any human is with her baby. They nuzzle each other. We can hear them talking to each other underwater through hydrophones. Next one. So this is a nursery. Everything these whales know, they have to learn from their mother, and they learn by imitating. So like I say, if the mother will nurse for about 8 months, if she dies, the baby's going to die because these whales will not adopt an orphan. So as soon as that baby gets in that lagoon, mother makes it swim nonstop, day and night, never stopping unless it absolutely has to. And like any baby, it's going to tire very quickly, and that's where we come in. Mother will put that baby on her back, and she will bring it up to us as a respite from its training in order to play with us. Next shot. This is a baby whale climbing on its mother's tail flukes to come up to our boat. I've had full-grown female whales come up underneath us, upside down, hold our boat with their pectoral fins on either side, lift us out of the water, and spin us around, because we are bathtub toys to them. We are there to provide them a break from their training routines, and that is all we mean to them. Next shot. This is a full-grown female pushing a young baby onto its mother's back so it can come up to us to be petted. When mother thinks the baby's had enough attention, she'll push it aside and she'll come in herself because mothers need love too. Next shot. This is probably the rarest photo I've ever taken of a whale. This is a newborn baby whale, and it's sound asleep on its mother's back. Now, I said they sleep when they're traveling by shutting off half their brain like a dolphin does. The other half stays awake. But these babies don't have that ability yet. This baby's sound asleep. So what mother will do is spy hop. She'll stick her head out of the water and look around. She'll estimate how long it would take a predator to reach her from the horizon, and that is exactly how long she will let that baby sleep before she makes it start swimming again. Seals that haul out on the ice have this also built-in infallible inner clock, just like these whales do. Next shot. This is a mother whale with her newborn, and she is spy hopping. You can see that the baby is so young, it has no barnacles, it has no coloration or anything. It's just a newborn. Next one. Now, this is a full-grown whale actually spy hopping. They have to look out like that because their eyes face down and out, so they can't really see what's in front of them. When they want to see what's around, they stick their head up like this in a spy hop, and they will rotate to see what's around them. If the water is shallow enough, they will stand on their tails to do this. Now, the eye is here. That eye is the size of my fist. About 6 inches behind that eye, there's a hole in the head the size of the nail on your pinky finger. That is this whale's ear. This whale can tell from 100 miles away when a boat puts into the water anywhere near it. Next shot. They have a serrated lower throat pouch, much like a pelican. They can expand this when they feed, and you can also see the baleen of this whale, which I'll tell you about in a second. These whales are the only bottom-feeding whales. Next shot. What they do is they go along the bottom with that pouch extended fully, and they scoop up tons of silt and water and krill and amphipods, and then they will push all of the water and the sand out with their tongue. It traps the krill and amphipods in the back of their baleen, and they lick that off with their tongue, and that is how they eat. And what you see here is a young whale expelling all of that sand and water. It has just finished feeding on the bottom. Next one. This whale is doing the same. Now, an interesting fact also we found from necropsies on these dead whales is that they are right or left-sided, just like you are right or left-handed. The baleen will be worn down on one side of their mouth only because they always go through the sand on the bottom of the seafloor on that side of their mouth. Usually those same whales are going to be blind in that eye from rubbing in the sand over so many years. Next shot. This is what baleen looks like. It's made from keratin, just like your fingernails. And a young whale, that thing is as soft as cotton. But just like your nails harden and turn yellow as we age, so does whale baleen. Next one. This is a very unique behavior that only gray whales practice. They like to come to the boat with their mouths open and have their tongue scratched and their baleen rubbed. They are playful as puppies about this. They are rambunctious. They will ram into our boats. They will push each other out of the way to get to us in order to get this attention. Next shot. Yeah, let's just go slowly through 2 or 3. I think these are all whales coming up to have their baleen rubbed. Why? Okay, they don't have any arms. They don't have any hands. But they do rub on boats. They like the sensation of touch. And in the lagoon is the only place where they know they can come up and safely get touched by people. This one is rolling on its side. They particularly, yeah, you can go ahead. They particularly like having their rostrum or the tip of their nose scratched. This is a full breach. These animals do this quite often. A lot of people think it's a form of communication. Some say it's how they dislodge barnacles. That's nonsense. A barnacle will not be dislodged from breaching. I think they do it because basically in the water they are weightless. But once they leave the water and they get that 40 tons up in the air, they have that split second where they hang there in the air and they are weightless. And I think they're doing that out of sheer joy. Next shot. Babies tend to breach far more often than the adults because they're still learning how to do this stuff. Like as I said, they learn everything by imitating their mothers. This baby is upside down because they tend to roll and twist and turn and everything as they're outside of the water. Next one. The best part of this for me is when they come up to the boat and they hang there and they look at you eye to eye. Next shot. I have had hours of conversations with these animals where neither of us has a thing to say to each other. We're just trying to figure out what is in each other's minds. I can see the intelligence in these eyes, and I know they are talking to me. I have a dear friend who's heavily involved in interspecies communication research, and he has just begun to decipher some of the sounds these animals make, and we honestly believe that within my lifetime, we may be able on a very basic level to start talking to these animals. Next shot. As you can see, they're pretty playful. They like to pop up in one spot when you're looking the other way. This photo actually went viral worldwide. It appeared on the cover of the Manchester Guardian in England. I did not take this shot, but I do know everybody in that boat. I took the next shot, which this whale is doing the same thing. Look at me, I'm over here. They're very playful creatures in that way. Next one. What this whale is doing, it's inverted itself, and it's putting its tail up in the air to act as a sail, and they will race each other like this, letting the wind blow them along upside down. Next shot. Okay, there's a video here. If there's no problem, Phoebe, can you play that? And I'll take you guys out on the water to actually see what it's like to be with these animals. Wrong one, back. Okay. Neither one. There's two videos here. Okay. No, that's not me. I was taking the photo.
Neither one of them.
Okay, I apologize for that. I had two videos here. I was going to take you on the water, and you won't be able to do that tonight, so let's just move along to the next slide. Life in camp at the end of a day on the water. Okay, when the tide is out, we can walk halfway across this lagoon because in front of our camp it's only 2 to 3 feet deep. We dig fresh clams, we dig fresh scallops, we eat them right on the spot, raw out of the shell. We take lime and lemon and salt with us, and we pull these guys out of the sand and we eat them. Next one. At night we like to barbecue oysters at camp. Next. We live in a natural history museum down there. This little hole on the left is an octopus house, and we can always tell them because they build walls around them out of shells and rocks to keep predators away. Octopus are among the friendliest creatures on Earth. They solve problems, they use tools. They love to crawl all over us, and I love to have them do it. In my opinion, the two smartest animals on this planet are the orca and the octopus. Next animal. Next. These are baby lobsters swimming around right in front of our cabins. Next. I can walk for miles out there and wonder if these animals died a violent death from a harpoon or natural causes, because the beaches are lined with whale bones. Next. That is a half of a mouth of baleen, and you can pick this stuff off the ground down there. It's everywhere. Next. My wife and I exploring one of the islands in the lagoon full of whale bones. There's 180 species of seabirds down there, and my favorite happens to be the osprey. Now, there's not a tree within 20 miles, so that osprey on the upper right, he's got to fly that far and find tree branches, which he brings back to the female, who is a natural-born architect. She will construct a nest that weighs 300 to 400 pounds, and it will last their entire lifetime because these are monogamous creatures. The female on the left is feeding a freshly caught halibut to her chicks. These guys love to make nests on top of our cabins, and these nests get so heavy that they have collapsed roofs of our cabins. Next one. You can sit in front of your cabin and count tens of thousands of seabirds who cover the sand so you can't even see the shore, and they all take off en masse and they blot out the sun. Next. We came to terms with coyotes long ago. We do not deter them because they are as much a part of the landscape as the whales. We're used to them. They leave us alone. They are not aggressive. They are not dangerous. The only thing is we never leave anything outside our cabins at night because they're master thieves and they'll take anything they can carry. Next shot. These guys were actually fighting over a 6-foot eel they dug out of the sand when I came on them, and you can see that the loser's not very happy about that. Next shot. We have desert foxes and we have peccaries. We also have mountain lions, but I don't have any photos of them, and there are wolves still in the central mountains of Baja. Next one, please. Now, I like to end some of these trips by going up into the local mountains, and we hire local vaqueros, Mexican cowboys, and these guys are the real deal when they do this. They wear leather chaps, they got Winchester 74s and scabbards, they got spurs on their boots, and they carry 6 guns on their hips. Next shot. Directly inland from San Ignacio Lagoon, there are painted caves. Throughout Baja, there are 400 sets of painted caves, but only the ones directly inland from San Ignacio, 25 miles from the water and 2,000 feet at elevation, there are caves with anatomically perfectly rendered whales. Next shot. Oh, I have to put this in there. Y'all recognize Pierre Odier. This was the first time he and I traveled together. It was on that very first time I went up to see these caves. This was the first of 5 major expeditions we made together. Next one. You'll notice the painting on the left, the fellow wearing something that looks like a jester's hat. Anthropologists have told me that they believe this would be a shaman because of his headgear, and the fact that he is painted two-tone, half black and half red, signifies that he is in the material and the spiritual world simultaneously. The smaller black and red figure would be his assistant or an assistant. Anyway, there are dozens of such renderings in these caves. Next shot. All of them with their hands raised. This is in supplication to some form of deity. We know they were conducting religious experiments in these caves. There's decades and decades of fire singeing inside. And next one. This is the most unusual part because out of these 400 caves, only 3 of them directly in from San Ignacio Lagoon came with whales. Now, in order for them to have rendered that whale with such accuracy 10,000 years ago, they had to have seen an entire animal. They either found it on the beach. What did it mean to them if that happened? Was it a spirit or was it a source of food? Who knows? The next one. What is very unlikely is the fact that 10,000 years ago, they only had dugout canoes, and it's highly unlikely they would hunt these giant whales from a dugout. But you'll notice there's a tiny little boat above that animal, and there are lines running to it, which signifies one of 2 things. Either they had stuck a harpoon or a spear into that animal, or maybe just a line means they're trying to connect to it spiritually. There's no way of knowing. But next one. Yeah. There are painting after painting of these tiny little boats connected to whales. Each of these has been carbon dated anywhere from 8 to 10,000 years ago, attributed to the Cochimi people. Next one. One more shot. Now, these are the final proof that for at least 10,000 years, mankind has been connected to these animals in this lagoon. Now I'm going to wind things down here to show you one of our next shot will be one of our sunsets. I have to apologize for not showing you the videos. They were pretty spectacular. That was just a technical glitch. But I do want to tell you one more. Yeah. In this book, I write extensively about the natural history of Baja, the indigenous people. I have several chapters on the whole history of whaling, which is pretty brutal reading. especially about California coastal whaling, because until 1965, there were as many as 20 whaling stations right here on the coast of California. The first one was in Monterey, where I live, and the last one shut down in San Francisco in 1965. On top of that, I write extensively about whales in captivity, and not just gray whales, but orcas and dolphins, because the Navy keeps captive dolphins for military purposes. The Russians are illegally taking orcas on the high seas, and they're selling them to Chinese theme parks, and they're proliferating at a great degree that is frightening. And all of this is being done surreptitiously without the world being aware of most of it's happening. By the way, Russia has killed probably 500% more whales than any other nation on Earth. But you're never going to hear about that from official circles. There is a great movie out called The Witness is a Whale that will address that issue directly, and it's available on the internet if you're interested in it. The final thing I write about in this book is an ongoing battle we've been fighting for years with the Mitsubishi Corporation, the worst environmental company on Earth, who have been trying for decades to put a salt works in this lagoon and shut it down forever, which would destroy the whales' natural habitats. And that's the end of my program. If anybody, one more shot though. Got one more left? Yeah. If anybody's interested, there are bookmarks on the back table there, because I'm going to be leading a trip down there next year, and there's a QR code on there that will take you to the company website. I have my own page on the company website for the trips I'll be leading. And I hope some of you are interested enough to read the book and come and join me down in Mexico. Now, if you're interested, I'll take your questions, and I hope you'll be interested enough to buy some books. I also brought some of my previous books, which deal with my remote travels and indigenous tribal cultures. So in spite of not having my videos, I thank you very much for coming to listen to me tonight, and I hope you've got some questions for me.
Thank you, yeah. Wonderful presentation. I'm going to start. Is it possible, does anybody ever get in the water and swim with the whales?
No, it is not allowed, and if you did, the whale would disappear. They would be gone in a shot. And this lagoon, at its deepest, is 100 feet. In front of our camp, it's only 3 feet deep. There's only certain channels where the whales can navigate. In fact, one of the problems I've run into down there a lot are baby whales getting stranded on sandbars, where we have to go out and put our line over them, cover their face with a wet blanket so they don't panic, run a line around their tail flukes, and pull them out into deep water where their mothers are panicking looking for them.
Wow. Questions?
In the back.
Go from the back.
I don't think I need a mic. How are they translating the language? How are they translating the language? You talked about it in your lifetime. You thought
Right now they're using AI, believe it or not. They're transcribing certain sounds. This was pioneered up in British Columbia by a fellow named Paul Spong, who recorded every known orca who passed through the Inside Passage. He recorded every orca. He documented them. He digitally cataloged them according to different sounds they made. And what he found out when they took these recordings to SeaWorld, which at that time still had captive whales they were torturing, he would play these calls from their home pods, and only the whales that were captured from that pod would respond to that language. So using that as a basis, they're transferring this to other whale species now. Gray whales have a very low frequency. They're hard to hear, but we can pick up certain sounds they're making. And like I said, these are the first baby steps of being able to interpret what they're saying. Rich?
2 questions. First one is, what's the length of your trip that you're offering next year?
This is 6 days.
And the second question is, any other species of whales come into that lagoon?
Not in that lagoon. This is only gray whales. And there have never been any predation in this lagoon until last year. For the first time in recorded history, orcas entered this lagoon and made a kill. Now, that panicked everybody that's lived there, because if orcas start showing up regularly, they're all going to lose their way of life, and the whales will stop going there. Fortunately, this year, the orcas came in for 1 day and left without making a kill. And we're hoping that that was a one-time thing.
Ernie Harris, Jim. Do the whales ever get stuck on the sandbars when the tide goes out? Or do they ever beach themselves onto the shore?
The babies do quite often. The adults do not.
And what do you do about them? Do you try to get them back into
We
the
put a
water?
line
Or can
around
they
their
survive?
tail. We put a line around their tail, and we pull them out with our pongas.
Can they survive on the ground?
We get them out.
Water comes back in?
We get them out long before they drown.
Okay.
It only takes a few minutes to get one dislodged. I would love for these guys to see that video, especially if there's some sound. The first one in particular. Yeah. It usually takes a second to start. This is drone video, directly overhead one of the pongas. And it's taken its time. I'll take questions in the meantime while you guys are waiting to see if this works or not. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
You made a comment about Magdalena Bay.
Yes. I don't like No, not yet. I don't like Magdalena Bay. It is not very well regulated. They harass the animals there. When we go out here, it is highly regulated. We only allow 16 boats on that lagoon at any one time, and there's a warden monitoring that. We have 2.5 hours each boat, and then one boat has to go back while another boat comes out. Magdalena Bay, they harass the animals. They get too close to them. I don't like it. Same thing in the North and Scammons Lagoon. There's way too many boats and whales for the number of whales that are there.
And then can you comment about they travel up the coast here?
Yes.
And can you give us any insights about behaviors or anything about that when they travel up the bigger part?
They're going to swim nonstop as long as they can before they have to rest. If they have to rest, they'll turn off half their brain. Orcas are going to line up outside the mouth of the lagoon and try to pick off the babies as they leave. Baby gray whale is the preferred food of an orca. If an orca makes a kill, what it's going to do is it's going to attack the mother at the base of her spine and try and sever her tail, her spinal cord, so she can't use her tail as a weapon. A gray whale can knock an orca silly with her tail, but in the end, the orca will kill it. It will then get on top of the baby gray whale and drown it. And if it's well fed, it will only eat the baby's tongue, and it'll be on its way. And this will happen all the way from southern Baja up to the waters of Alaska.
I have an orca question because this last week there was a lot of publicity about a pod of orcas near Gibraltar that keeps attacking sailboats and yachts.
Yes.
And the news media had talked about them playing, but they showed them ramming, and I understand that's a hunting, feeding behavior. In any case, just wondering if you can tell us a little bit what you think's going on with the orcas, because I think they figured out there's food inside. Again, they're ramming the boats, and I understand that's a hunting predator behavior.
It is. It started with one matriarch. They're a matriarchal society. The female, the dominant female rules the pod. The dominant bull protects the pod. This what happened off the coast of Gibraltar was an old female who got rammed by a sailboat. I don't know how. Perhaps she was infirm. She took it quite personally and attacked that boat. Now, the last recorded attack before that was in 1853. And there's a book out called The Wreck of the Whale Ship Essex, and Ron Howard made a terrible movie about that book. It had nothing to do with it, called In the Heart of the Sea, and the whale in that movie looked nothing like any whale I've ever seen. But that was the last known attack by a whale on a ship until these orcas. Now, this is a learned behavior. There have been 27 attacks on sailboats since then, all in Portugal or off the coast of Gibraltar. And that tells me that these are resident whales because it has not spread around the world yet. If they were transient whales, they'd be doing this everywhere. And the fact that they are ramming these boats, they're only going for the rudders. I have 2 different videos of orcas swimming with boat rudders in their mouths. This was taught to them. This is a learned behavior that's passed on, just like these mothers will teach baby gray whales to approach a boat. If the mother approaches a boat, the baby will approach boats. If she never approaches a boat, that baby will never do it. It is all a learned behavior. Having said that, 2 or 3 days ago, an orca rammed a sailboat in Scotland. So perhaps it is spreading. We will find out. Where I live in Monterey, there were 33 orcas in the bay last week. They were putting on a real show, but nobody attacked a boat. Anybody else?
Seeing none. Oh, we got one over here. One over here.
I think you said, not tonight, but in the past, that the whales will spy hop and that they look around to see landmarks to help navigate. Is that true?
Not to navigate. They navigate by underwater geography, and I believe it's embedded in their DNA from centuries of these migrations. It's 7,000 miles each way from there to the Mexican lagoons, 7,000 miles back. That's a 14,000-mile round trip they make every year. They're navigating underwater all that time. They only spy hop when they want to see what's in the immediate vicinity around them. And they have, like I said, they have hair, just like we do. They have dimples on their rostrum with a single hair in each dimple. That's a sensory device that picks up vibrations in the water and tells them what's close by. Yes. over
Last
there.
question here. Surprise, I'm back.
Jim, talking about the migration, on the map that you were showing, it looked like there were two migration trails. It looked like there was one that was closer to shore and then one that was much further out. Do you want to clarify that?
Yes, on the southern migration, they tend to hug the coast very closely because mothers are having half the babies along the way. So they stick really close to shore where they can use natural underwater camouflage like kelp beds and rock formations. When the baby's born, they want to get back quicker because they're running a gauntlet of predators. So they go further out to sea, and that was the second line you saw. Off the coast of California heading south, they're going to be right off the shore here. Sometimes you're going to see them right next to surfers. When they go back north, they're going to be in the far side of the Channel Islands. That's the difference. Yeah, in some areas, like when they get to Monterey Bay. Because Monterey Bay is the second largest and second deepest bay on Earth, and they tend to avoid it because it's full of orcas. Yes, sir.
So they go further out at Monterey Bay?
They will try to go around it, yes.
So since we're talking whales, Captain Paul Watson was so radical anti-whaling, he got kicked out of Greenpeace. He had a TV show made about him called Whale Wars. Do you have opinions, or can you tell us anything about him and his methods? Because
He was also thrown out of Sea Shepherd, which he created.
Because he's focused on the mission, which is ending whaling, right?
Yeah, a few years ago, the Macaw tribe up in northwestern Washington did an illegal whale hunt. Watson was up there with an old World War II submarine painted to look like an orca. He was blasting loudspeakers of orca cries, and he was following the indigenous people in their canoes who were out to kill this illegal whale. And the Coast Guard cited Paul Watson for harassing the animals with these loudspeakers he was blasting. He was cited for harassing the animals that the indigenous people were there to kill. So tell me how that works. It made no sense. They made an illegal kill. The whale sank, and the Coast Guard had to send divers down to bring it up. It rotted on the beach because nobody knew how to butcher a whale, and none of the people there wanted to eat it. It was just a bunch of young bucks who wanted to go out and kill something. There's a book about that called The Whale Hunt. It'll tell you the whole story, and I wrote about half of that into a chapter in my book. Anybody else?
James, thank you so much for joining us tonight and speaking here with us at the Adventurers Club. Now, as is tradition, it's my pleasure to present this certificate to you. I'm just going to raise the screen here so you can point on the map. Oh yeah, please end the video.
Okay, drum roll.